Cool. And I think that's everyone who's going to come in, or they'll mosey in, so we'll get started. It's just mainly we're just going to talk about like how it's implemented, RFID, kind of what it is, how it works, and then kind of how to break it, or really not even break it, but just like what's wrong with it, like kind of common flaws, and then kind of how to prevent it, and walk through like a not a common attack, but how most people would attack your company if they're going to attack you using like RFID. And I'm PIPS. There's all that info. Follow me on Twitter. I want to surpass Dumby over there. He was gloating about hitting 1,000 a day. So.
Oh man. Wait, what? On Twitter?
Yeah, I'm like 200. You can email me pips@801labs if you want to send hate mail. So before just kind of talking about like how to break it, a lot of people don't fully understand what RFID is. I barely do. And so I just kind of wanted to go over that. The basics of RFID is it's not actually magic, despite common belief. It stands for radio frequency identification, or RFID, and it's close, just one-way communication. And it's a lot like NFC, except NFC can work kind of both ways. The essentials of it is your card or your NFC token or tag or card or sticker, whatever it is, has a coil, a copper coil on the outside that's its antenna, and a chip that coil is connected to. And there's an illustration right there. You've got the chip and the coil, and past that, the kind of way that it works in I guess production is you'll have a reader, and in that reader, I'm sure plenty of you have already seen this kind of reader all around. You'll have an antenna on the inside that just goes around the outside. That antenna is powered, basically. It has power, and you've got your card over there. When your card gets close enough, the power of the antenna, from the antenna, basically kind of jumps to your card. It jumps to your card, it powers the chip in your card, and the chip sends back its data to the card reader, and the card reader sends it off to whatever access control software you're using. From there, it decides, does this person belong? Can we unlock the door? Should we set off an alarm? Whatever. One cool thing that I've seen a company do is even like RFID-based soda machine. So you like tap your RFID card and it turns it on for like 2 minutes. You can fill up a soda. You can do pretty much whatever you want. It's just keying events based off of other events. And there are a ton of different types of RFID tags, chip and coil. So there's ones that you've probably seen. And how many of you have one of these? I'm sure it's all of you. It's literally all of you, at least one of these. The medallion ones are fairly common because they're smaller and fit on a keychain. You've got your classic PVC clamshell cards. Those things kind of suck because they're really thick. And then you've got the thinner isoproc cards, these kind of thin cards. And they all use the same protocol. Most of them are rewritable. And so there are a lot of common ones. And then there's actually a crap ton of RFID that's really not necessarily uncommon, but most of you probably haven't seen. You've got RFID nails. So you can hammer in a wooden box and then track it in shipping with just swiping past one of the nails. There are random tags that you can super glue or screw into just about anything for RFID. You've got implantables. So kind of the thing that you put in your dog to keep track of them, or soon enough people. There are a lot of people who have a reprogrammable RFID chip in their hand. Do you have one?
I got NFC and RFID.
NFC and RFID. It's freaking awesome. It's like implantable.
I lose everything.
Yeah, exactly. You can never lose your keys.
Are you gonna clone him before the?
We can. Where do you live again? There are like solid iron tags that are like super indestructible for like undersides of cars and like heavy metal equipment. There are plain old like zip ties and tamper evidence stuff too. And then my favorite is there's actually fabric RFID tags that you can sew into like clothing and stuff.
Are they washable?
Yes, they are. They will last for like 20 years. So there's like a crap ton of RFID tech. And like what can you do with it? Obviously access control, and you can kind of do data correlation like with a vending machine. You can tap against it and say like, oh, this person bought this here, we can bill them at the end of the month. You can use it kind of for, like accountability, like you have to badge into work, obviously, and then correlate that badge data with something else. So you can say this person was here at this time and their badge swipe was here, or their computer was just accessed. Let's say there was a security event and their computer was accessed, but for some reason their badge was never in the building. Like they've never swiped in. It was their day off. That might give you some indicators as to maybe it wasn't the actual employee. You can use it for like single sign-on kind of stuff, account federation. That's one thing that's a lot of companies are starting to do is they'll just hand you your badge when you're onboarded, or for single sign-on, or for billing. Two-factor is one of the really common things, especially with going with like implantables or like stickers. I've got an RFID sticker on my phone, so you tap your phone, you put in a pin or whatever, and kind of gives you two different factors. One of the really common things in RFID is just asset management and tracking. That's kind of where like those NFC nails or RFID nails and zip ties and stuff like that come in. Is a lot of factories, it's a lot easier to slap an NFC sticker on stuff or a nail or whatever and track it through there just through automatic scanners than barcodes, because you have to have light, you have to align it properly with a barcode, whereas with this you can read it in the dark from a reasonable distance, and they're harder to get destroyed.
Or keep it from getting stolen.
Or keep it from getting stolen, yeah.
Which happens with like books and movies pre-release.
And there are all sorts of just different stuff that you can do with RFID. And
or even cooler is Disneyland has those little bands that they put around.
Yep.
They use them for RFID, and they'll like track where you are on the ride and show you personalized experience because of the band you're wearing.
Yep.
It's crazy.
That would be a fun thing to mess with, is like go to Disneyland and rewrite a whole bunch of people's cards.
Fast passes.
Fast
so
pass.
many fast passes.
It's like, oh, nice fast pass, man. Swipe your hand past, and now I've got a fast pass. So that's just kind of what RFID is, how it works, kind of, how it's integrated, kind of. There's a lot of more applications for it. But those are the general ones, chip in a reader, and then you fire events based off of that reader. So there are some things that you can do to exploit RFID. There's most chips are readable. Actually, all chips should be readable by definition of the technology, unless it requires some two-way challenge response. And almost all chips are writable. The clamshell cards that I'm sure almost all of you have, these are all rewritable. So anyone who can get close enough to your card can just rewrite it. If someone wants to just be a jerk, I'll just write 0 to your card and watch you struggle to get into work. And with the fact that chips are readable and writable, it's also really easy to just buy a bunch of these and write whatever card I want to it. So I can copy your card and write it, or I can just make a backup of my card. An employee gets terminated and you have very bad physical security, some companies will just take their access card. Like, you need to give this back to us, and then they'll just give it to another person. That's how parking structures almost always work, is they'll just keep redistributing the same badge to different people. So you can copy your badge and keep parking there. Let's see. So, and one of the more scary parts is almost all facilities buy their cards in incremental stacks. And what I mean by that is the serial number on the stack is almost always going to be incremental. So it's going to go from one value to the end of that stack. And this is actually from a stack of cards at my office. And why that's actually really scary, a massive just box of 100 of them, is they're assigned as needed, and they're usually grabbed from the stack of cards. And we can read someone's card, copy it to our own, and replay it to the reader. And actually, sorry, this was a little out of order, but I don't think this video wants to load. Marv. There we go. So here's just like a standard card emulation. So there are a lot of devices like this Proxmark that can emulate someone's card. And so you can copy their card. So you can record a card, you swipe past someone's card close enough, it'll pick up the tag, tag 1337, and you'll record it, and then from this device you can clone it. You can clone it to the reader, or you can clone it to an actual card as a backup, or you can replay it directly to the reader. So a kind of device like this is really useful in attack because you don't have to like read their card, write it down, take it home, and then like program it to a card. You can just replay it directly to the reader and never even have to write it to a card. And And so let's see, there was that video. Yeah. Pass that around. If it doesn't make it back to me, I will shake you down. And actually, why don't I? Well, we'll do that later. So there's like standalone reading. So, we can read people's cards. We can copy it to our own. We can replay it. And with the whole facilities buying cards in incremental stacks, their badge numbers are going to be next to each other. They're going to grab from the stack of badges, and they're going to assign that badge to a user. And so, nearby badges, you've got all your badge card numbers, 1337, and so these just come from the stack. It's just card after card after card. So
the card numbers are writable. Are there any fixed values?
There are some cards with fixed values, but the thing is that just means that you can't write it. You can still read it.
So it means you can also clone it.
Yeah, it means that you can clone. You can read an unwritable card and then write it to a writable card, or you can just replay it from a card cloner. So let's say you have a stack of, I don't know how many this is, 8 cards, and they're all incremental. And so maybe the first card is assigned to John Doe with help desk access. And he badges in, and on the access control software, he's only allowed into certain rooms at certain time of the day and things like that. Maybe the card next to him was a fired employee who was terminated. The next one, maybe the card got lost. The next one is maybe Becky, what's her name in HR. That's only 3 values up from your current card, or from one person's card to the other, but that person suddenly has HR access. Maybe you're also using your cards for 2-factor, or for accessing certain files, you have to tap your card because that card should belong to someone who should have specific access. So you can use that for your 2-factor. Maybe next one's unassigned, and maybe the one after that is the CEO who's always there working really late. So maybe a couple cards up from Becky is the CEO who's there all the time. He has 24/7 access to the building. Maybe he only has access to executive levels, but right after that, there might be someone in the cleaning crew. Cleaning crews are a great target because they always have access. Well, they might have scheduled access, but they have after-hours access, and it's usually full facility access because they need to clean the whole facility. And maybe the one after that is unassigned. So badges can be brute forced. You simply just have to change the last card number up and down. And so brute forcing them is actually really freaking easy. So I actually did this at work. That's on the server room, by the way, to prove that it's possible. And there's a little biometric reader, which is useless if you're just using a card. And let's make sure that the audio works for this too, because it's fun to hear the little beep and click. Make sure this video loads too. Oh, right. There we go.
You just muted it.
Did I? There we go. All right, let's start it from the beginning. So the first card is my card, and you'll hear it actually unlock. And you'll hear it trying new cards, and it's just going up the list. Unlocked.
Wow.
Unlocked. And then there's a few cards that it couldn't hit. And it keeps going up. And then the last one, I actually kick open the door, and there's the server room, there's some stock and everything. And I did that just from one card. And here's actually what it looks like from the logs. You've got person has requested access to the device server room, access granted. You'll see the card number, 21. It's decrement. It's,
So you're 11.
Yep, maybe. And you'll see it incrementing up. So card 9, no one worked. Try card 10, no one worked. And the problem is the reader actually doesn't, or the card cloner doesn't know what worked or not. You do. So it's kind of a blind attack. But it's just going to keep trying card numbers within your current range. So you've got there's your facility code, which is kind of like your separator, and that code kind of bases what your card number is on. So a facility code of 33 and a card number of 1009, 1010, 1011. Once you kind of know the range of cards that it's going to be in, once you can scan one card that you know is going to open a door somewhere in there, you might not, that card may not have access to anything. That could be a terminated employee card, which is kind of a scary thing too, because you could just find some employee who maybe has a grudge and say, dude, let me buy your old access card for 20 bucks off of you. And while that card may not do anything, the card 2 above it or 2 below it might. And you could just sit there and keep trying cards, especially after hours. Just walk up to their doors and wait for security to chase you off, and just keep trying cards. And when you find one that works, just pause it, write it to an actual working card, write "works" or whatever on it, and put it back in your badge or your bag. And you can see it unknown card swipe on server room, and you can see it just incrementing up the card numbers. Oh, we hit another person. Oh, a few later we hit another person and another person. And if I had let this keep going, it would have found more people. I just wanted to make the video short, and that was the logs from the video. So there are problems with brute force. Obviously, it's a blind attack. You don't really know, or the card reader has no, card cloner has no way of knowing if the reader accepted the card. I'm sure that there are ways that you can make it. You could have it listen for an unlock tone. You could, depending on the card reader, you could see if the LED turns green. There are ways that you can automate knowing if the card worked, but it's kind of a blind attack. And then this, there's no way of knowing whose card you also use. This could be a terminated employee's card that set off an alarm. Maybe it might not unlock the door, but the fact that that card was just used, especially after hours, depending on your access control software, it may totally alert security. Hey, this dude just got fired for stealing office equipment, and he's trying to badge in, at 2 in the morning. Like, send security, turn on the cameras, lock doors, whatever. It's also really loud. So if you have anyone who's actually monitoring your access control logs, and just about every company doesn't, it's a pretty rare thing unless they have an incredible mind for security and physical security especially. But even then, access control is not very often logged. But it still is loud. So if there are, as newer systems come out, there are a lot that are allowing you to add brute force detection. I haven't seen any yet that do rate limiting. There's no reason that a door should be allowed to, send cards like 30 times in a second. But there was no one when they wrote the software that said, hey, we should maybe not allow this because deadlines, whatever. And most of the software that's running your access control is going to be like 10, 15 years old. It's old stuff. It's old technology. And there's no reason to replace it because it works. And you're replacing kind of one of those critical security things, especially if you haven't found any problems with it. So it's not like common patching. There's not a reason for you to upgrade your security because it's just going to cost you money. But it is loud, and if someone's watching, they can't. And it's really easy to spot it on access control monitoring walls, or if you just see someone sitting there with whatever device over a badge reader and you just hear beep, 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 beep. Like, that's suspicious, right? Like, I would be suspicious of that.
Well, I've been to office buildings before, and sometimes they have them in like fire escapes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
Those are really
nobody
easy. Yeah,
goes to fire escapes.
Yeah.
You just go in there and just
hang out and that's actually one of the things that I did to test. Then I was like, actually, the server room would be a lot more fun for a video. And yeah, it's easy to spot. At work, we're building an access control monitoring wall for a whole bunch of different sites. So that's something that, companies may start getting to catch on to, but that's more of a flashy feature anyways.
Good reason to feed this into your sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is actually what is being done on some buildings and what we're trying to do. I'm not going to talk about my company, but it's also, it's easy to alarm, higher security facilities may also have you badge out as well. So let's say you stumble across someone's badge, you're going and brute forcing badges and you hit someone's badge that's already in the building. If it's a high security facility, especially one with man traps, they'll often have you badge out. So if a badge is used at the front door when the person is already in the facility, like 8 layers deep, that's going to set off a lot of alarms. On the much, much higher security facilities, this kind of stuff is not advised. Because they have thought about it and they will find you.
Although a fun story with that is if they do that and the person's outside the building, you can DOS all the employees out of the building.
Oh yeah, that's a good point actually.
Say that with recording. That's awesome.
There was another one where it was like this malicious attack, but you could basically rip a reader off the wall if you could figure out how to not set off the alarm, and you could kind of attach this chip to it, and you could control it. It was one I was talking with Pope about, but you could take all their cards as they were swiping them and replay them. But another thing that you could do is you could make it malicious. You can actually make the card reader rewrite people's cards. So if you wanted to be a massive jerk, you could just have every card that passes by write 0. So they try and swipe in, and rather than it sending their card to access control, it just writes nothing to it. no one can get in, and no one probably knows what their card value was originally. And on most cards, you're going to have the card value, the number that's sent printed on the card. But if you rewrite it, unless they have a card writer, they're not going to be able to do anything with that because every card is now the same. They're going to have to call in their access control company and figure out what happened. And so a kind of theoretical attack with RFID is, let's say you're going after a company. You're going to want to target some employees or a group of employees. You're going to obviously do some research. Actually, this slide should not be in there. Forgot. Let's start at this one. Sorry about that. So first you're going to target your employees, the employees of this company. You're going to have to figure out, obviously you're going to do your recon. You're going to know what company, the people, maybe what access they have or what position they're in, possibly what kind of access they might have based off of their position. If you're going after a sysadmin, a network admin, a security guard, a cleaning crew, whatever. If they even use cards, do they use medallions? Do they use physical cards? Are they clamshell? Are they the credit card style ones? Is it a crazy company that forces everyone to get an RFID implant? Like this is info you're probably going to need to know when targeting. And then does their company even have access control? That's obviously a pretty basic one, but some basic open source intelligence, just recon. You need to figure out what your target is and if this kind of attack is going to work. The second one is to get to the employees. You're going to need to find a public place where these employees are going to be, preferably off-site. So kind of look for coffee shops. Coffee shops nearby are a good one. Down the street, if the business has a cafe that's open to the public, those are good places. Elevators are a great one because it's a confined space. And there's a lot of people. Public transportation can work fairly well. You just need to know their route home, and that's more akin to stalking and less breaking in and entering.
It's really not that hard. Just go from the freeway to the office.
And I mean, if you're going to go in for one felony, might as well go in for might as well get them all. Disclaimer, of course, research, security, education, don't do that. Cafes work really well, especially like company cafes. Smoking areas are actually a pretty good one because those are usually going to be outside at least and a lot more accessible. You may not have access to the building, but maybe you've done all the rest of your physical security stuff and you have like an employee outfit, right? Like you copied one of their shirts or the general attire and you're just kind of hanging around the smoking area that's on campus but not really inside the building. And close quarters are kind of a must. Like you have to be able to get close to people, obviously. And then you need to kind of hide your badge reader. And there are a lot of different ways. You can hide it on the outside of a messenger bag fairly well because you've got like a flappy pocket that's going to be facing outward. So if that's on your hip and you get in an elevator, there's a good chance it's going to be close enough to someone's butt or wherever they've got their card, unless it's like around their neck really close, that you can get a good read. Or just inside a bag. Just any kind of bag sometimes works. Like I put my card clutter in this little toolkit, and this substance is thin enough that if I'm just walking around with this, like I'm a tech or whatever, who has a small set of tools, this can swipe past people really, really easily because I'm freely walking, whatever. Oh, tap, One of them actually works is you can do like long range readers too. And so outside of the bag, that works fairly well. You can get long range readers that work really well. You can actually hide inside of a glove. So this is the actual reader for the Proxmark here, and it's freaking small. So that would hide really well, and the cable can come out. That's the actual antenna. So you can hide that inside of a glove. That's really not suspicious. Well, in winter, it's not suspicious. In summer, I'd be a little more wary of someone like with their gloves trying to touch me. Not the TSA, but
if you have like biker gloves or something.
Yeah, biker gloves can work. Basically, any time that you can hide it in your palm works really well because you've got a lot more freedom of movement. Obviously, you're not going to like touch their butt and try and scan their card, but there are some ways. You can also buy long-range readers that can read from maybe the distance from me to Chris or whatever, a couple, maybe 6 feet maximum, and those are usually used for like cars and stuff. I know you have a question. What's up?
Oh, actually, I was just going to contribute a bit here. We do RFID with social engineering at the company I work for.
Okay.
And one that we have in our arsenal, but none of our customers have let us use yet, is a guard's outfit with a metal detector wand.
Oh, that's beautiful. Those work really well. Hard hats, yellow vests
cool.
and clipboard, a thick clipboard that you can hide other stuff in, like a rubber ducky and things like that. You know, the ones with a storage compartment, those are really good for physical security assessments. And you know, after that, you need to be able to copy their cards. You need to be able to close enough to read their cards. So you can brush against them, you can trip, stumble, get bumped, etc. You can pretend to fall. And actually, I kind of wanted to pull this up because I vaguely remember this from Mr. Robot.
Already paid. Just want to pay my respects. Thank you. Thank you.
It's low quality.
Sorry. Just want to pay my compliments. Hey, excellent coffee, fantastic service. Buy yourself something nice.
So that music was pretty climactic. Basically,
you
just
have to be listening to that.
Has
when
to
you
be.
do it.
Yes.
Just leave it.
Video. So, and that's just kind of the combination of all of them. But you're brushing against someone, you're tripping, you put your badge reader in a satchel, you know, that you're carrying around, and so it's not very like obvious. Yeah, exactly. It's not very obvious that you're trying to steal someone's card, especially out in public at a coffee shop where other employees are. And then you can clone the badge. So find a photo online. This was actually very useful. Thanks to Kevin Mitnick. He just kind of posted some photos of all of his clone badges that he made. If you don't know who Kevin Mitnick is, he's the world's most famous hacker. He kind of shows up at a lot of security conventions as a talking point for the most part about security. But his whole big thing was hacking people with social engineering. And I've actually copied his copied cards, some of them. I've also got a Rocky Mountain Power card, which is, will get you into a lot of places. I'm going to pass these around, of clone cards. And it's really not hard. You can combine this with OSINT, the open source intelligence kind of reconnaissance, where you're looking on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, things like that for employees who work for this company. And maybe they post a photo of their badge. Maybe they're all standing in a group, like so glad, summer 2017 interns. They're all standing around, and of course they all have their badge on their hip or around their neck. And that also gives you an indication of kind of what kind of attire they're wearing, obviously, but how most badges are presented. Are they in a plastic bag? Are they on just like a retractable little key thing? Are they around their neck? Are they on their badge? Are they in their pocket? Do they wear them out in public? And then copy them. And so that's actually kind of what I've got right here, which I'll show off a little later, is a badge printer. So it takes just blank, rewritable RFID cards. You pop it in. It literally acts like a printer. You don't need any special software. I just sketch it up in Photoshop, slap my face on it and name on it, and then just hit print. And it will literally just print on the card. And it's really good for copying people's cards, especially if you know what they look like. Thanks, Kevin. So let's talk about how to protect about it, because that's kind of the end of the attack. It's kind of a hard thing to protect against, but some of them are RFID shields, right? There's no reason that your card needs to be readable at all times. In fact, there's maybe like 10 seconds a day, the whole 24 hours where your card actually needs to be read, like needs to be officially. So you can use RFID shields. I think there was a company coming out with cards that you have to apply pressure, or it has to sense a capacitive change. So you have to like physically take it out, touch it, and it'll work for 5 seconds, and then it'll disable. It'll just like physically disconnect the antenna. That's a pretty easy way of stopping. Another one is just training your staff. Question people you've never seen. This is basic like physical security. You need to have an insight policy for not in office is a really good one too. Like, you shouldn't wear your employee badge off campus. Sometimes you shouldn't even wear it outside unless there's a reason for you to be wearing that badge. You shouldn't have it on. And sometimes it's the same with scrubs. People like to wear them out. People like to wear all sorts of things all the time off campus, and there's no real reason for it. And it makes stuff like this really easy if you do. If you've got your fancy little badge on your lanyard and you're hanging out at a coffee shop, that's everything that I need all in one. I can walk past with my phone, take a couple photos of it if I can't find it online, and then walk past again and scan it. So having an insight policy is really good. Just take your badge off, put it in the shield. When you get back to work, put it back on. Simple as that. And security too. You can have training security to check badges and faces for crappily cloned badges, or for badges that someone just cut off someone's keychain when they weren't looking. And I guess part of it is invest in good access control, which isn't really prevention. It's just doing it right the first time. And access control that allows like security guards to match faces to badges. So when you're enrolling someone in a badge, when you pull that badge from the top of the stack, you should take a photo of them, so that when they scan their badge, like in a man trap, when they scan their badge, they can't go anywhere, and security is actually verifying their physical presence is the same as the person who's attached that photo. It doesn't show up Becky when you're a 6 foot tall burly man with a beard. Like I don't think Becky looks like that.
Maybe now.
Maybe now. A day she really
I don't think you're allowed to ask anymore.
And I'm sure that there are other prevention stuff. I couldn't come up with much. But
Okay.
Two-factor, yes, actually, pins, thank you, pins and fingerprints and badges. I might do a talk on fingerprint readers later and the flaws with them, because I've got a couple at work and they're fun. Yeah, that's just kind of some of the things that you can prevent. Two-factor is obviously one of the biggest ones, but also just checking, having security, have the ability to know who's supposed to be badging in with this. And that's actually a common thing in government facilities, especially ones in like cities and in office buildings, especially shared office buildings, is you'll walk up to the front door, which is bulletproof, whatever. It's a secure door, and you have to swipe your badge, and there's a little camera right there. And the receptionist manually approves. Like, it pulls up a photo of who this is supposed to be, pulls up a live video feed of who it is, who used that badge, and you can manually approve. That's one of the better ones, but two-factor is probably one of the best ones. Unless, of course, you could steal their two-factor. Whatever, if it's a pin. Fingerprints are harder, but not impossible. But, yeah. So, any questions, comments, concerns? Do you hate it? Love it?
What type of badges have you worked with so far?
So the most common is the HID cards, the Prox card too, the clamshell. Some of them have the HID, some are blank, some of them actually have a company, whatever they printed on it. Those are the most common, at least in the US. Outside of the US, it's some of the higher frequency challenge and response cards. These are just a code. It's a very basic code. That code just gets demodulated over the wires on the radio and sent to the card reader. Played with those. The DEF CON room key is from DEF CON. The Caesar's Palace room key is one of the higher frequency cards that you can't actually clone this. I was really sad to find that out. Although there is a mag stripe, so hope might be saved for defaulting on older technology. These use MyFair, which is I think a Chinese company. It's a higher frequency challenge and response protocol. But most of the ones that I focused on are just the low frequency HID or HID-like. The ISO cards is kind of the standard, which is what's going to be at most companies. If you see HID on the door, it's going to be really easy to copy.
So look at passports yet?
I haven't. Does someone want to give me their passport?
You look
Is that an offer, Brutes?
No, no.